Nazism is a phenomenon we all want to know more about, irrespective of our ideology and inclination. Whether you're a pro or an anti-Nazi, it doesn't change the fact that German soldiers, any news, movie, or documentary related to them captures our attention. It is probably because there's a lot of general speculation and a gray area around the phenomenon, and the soldiers' lives in particular. The atrocities attributed to Nazis have made us perceive that they must be authoritative and in control during World War II. Their lives would just revolve around killing the Jews, but we forget that their leader was Hitler, who is well known for his cruelty towards his enemies and anyone who disobeyed. There are a lot of secrets and misconceptions circulating about Nazis during World War II. That's why we've come up with this video offering you a comprehensive view into the life of a Nazi soldier during World War II. So hang on, we'll be revealing a lot of information you probably haven't heard before. Welcome to the History Insight. After 7 decades, digging into a Nazi soldier's life isn't easy because the evidence we have today could be biased and distorted. Also, looking into the soldier's daily routine isn't possible in an individual frame because of the long duration of the war, the different ranks and duties of the soldiers, and the mindset on which every individual operated. Before getting into different routine tasks of a Nazi soldier, let me clarify here that all German soldiers cannot be termed Nazis. Nazism is a phenomenon that Hitler's core supporters and followers had in mind, a robust nationalistic policy and the exclusion of all other nationalities based on race and religion. However, we tend to generalize Nazism with the entire army because all the young kids were preached in a way that they easily adopted the phenomenon after joining the army. So, it would be unjust to portray the brutal acts of the Nazis without the complete context. Let's go back to 1933 when Hitler came to power. His rules, ideology, and philosophy were different from the prevailing beliefs. But he had such a robust approach that within the next 6 years, everyone showed an unmatched affiliation to him. The young school-going children were infused with the Heil Hitler ideology. For those who have no idea about Heil Hitler, it is a greeting that Germans from the Hitler time had to bid everyone multiple times a day. Originally, Heil meant salvation and described the relationship between God and humans. However, Hitler modified its use and made Heil Hitler an essential part of the kids' daily lives. Greeting Heil Hitler 100 to 150 times a day was made part of the law, and ignoring it was a punishable offense. From stepping out of the home, Heil Hitler chants started. The kids were expected to greet their parents with Heil Hitler while leaving for school. On the way, everybody they met had to be greeted this way. Teachers in the class, fellow students, and even the shopkeepers would use this greeting. You must be wondering what a greeting has to do with the Nazi soldier's life. The thing is, this greeting showing allegiance to Hitler was so entrenched in the lives of the German kids that they couldn't even think of anything out of it. Erika Mann wrote a book in 1938, In School for Barbarians, Education Under the Nazis. She pointed out that Hitler was changing the mindsets of the individuals by introducing new principles in the kids' lives. And she was right, as we saw in the years later to come. Heil Hitler was the first, but surely not the only thing. These kids learned to outcast the Jews from society altogether. Since the start of Hitler's reign, the Jews were identified as another racial class who couldn't buy everything they wanted, couldn't go to all the shops around, or serve the professions that were considered elite. Besides, the frequent disappearance of the Jews without any whereabouts was also a norm. So, the German kids always knew that these people were the state's enemies, and it was okay for everyone to treat them differently. Within the Hitler regime, German citizens had some national events weekly that they were expected to attend with families. But Jewish weren't considered part of the nation. These weekly events and ceremonies created a strong sense of nationalism, while Jews were kept out of it. Imagine all of it adding to the young brains where violence against other communities is a norm, and anything that Hitler says is right. There's no way you could let your mind think in its own way, because that would be immediately detected through different guards, specifically appointed to keep a check and balance in the residential areas. Also, Hitler ensured that the children had a special syllabus portraying Nazi ideology. The kids were frequently taken to picnics and camping, where drills were quite common. The main purpose of such activities was to prepare these kids for potential recruitment into the army. They were trained for it from quite the beginning. Once these kids grew older, they happily became part of the army for showing allegiance to Hitler. They considered it the right thing to do. The brutality for which they are known also has its roots in training. Training officers in the army were the old, not-fit-for-war soldiers with a brutal outlay. That's what they taught the young minds. So, everything combined, we saw the Nazi soldiers we all know in World War II. Coming back to how they spent their day during the World War. Instead of assuming, we can find the exact details of the overall life that a Nazi soldier spent through the direct account of Oskar Groening. He was the last living Nazi officer. In 2015, he was trailed and punished for his acts against humanity. He mentioned that back in 1942, at the age of 21, his first posting was in the Auschwitz concentration camp. In this camp, he witnessed the brutality and participated in the execution of the Jewish captives. The families were broken down as soon as the prisoners arrived at the camps. Their possessions were confiscated. They were segregated based on gender, age, and health. The ones considered unhealthy for any work were marked for execution. Even the children weren't spared. Whether in or outside the concentration camps, Nazis did not like the Jewish children making noise. Children as young as age 3 have been reported to be shot because of making noise. In the camp, the children were asked to make a line for breakfast when one of the guards counted them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the gunshot. Groening described that the ideology that Jewish are against the homeland was so entrenched in the minds of all the soldiers that they didn't find it difficult to kill people. The Jewish children were also considered to have blood from the same line, so they weren't shown any mercy. However, he mentions his fear of seeing Nazi soldiers' cruelty towards the prisoners. During Groening's posting in the concentration camp as an officer, he did not have to visit different camp areas. Still, he knew that people from different nationalities were brought to the base. The money notes and the currency submitted by the soldiers gave him the idea. Also, brandy and sambuca were snatched from the prisoners amongst the other possessions. It gave an idea of the origin and social class of the prisoners. But none of the belongings actually worked in helping them stay alive or live a better life at these concentration camps. The typical day of a Nazi soldier was spent going through all these activities, punishing the Jews for minor mistakes and executing the ones marked for death. All of what we have discussed showed the work life of a Nazi soldier during World War II, but there were things other than work. Auschwitz camp was not only a concentration camp, but a mini-city with a canteen, vegetable shops, cinema, theater, and sports club for the Nazi Guard. Once the shift of these soldiers ended, they socialized with each other and behaved like civilized individuals, irrespective of the atrocities that these individuals brought on the Jewish every day. We know Nazis with the characteristics mentioned above only, but not all of them were similar. A A few soldiers in the German army were not okay with the Nazi doctrine. A few protested while the others actively rescued the Jewish people. All such individuals were only a handful, and they had to bear the brunt of Hitler's system. But it highlights that people can make a difference even in the authoritarian structure. Also, a few people showed the courage to be part of an unsuccessful plan to assassinate Hitler on July the 20th, 1944. From these accounts of events, we can deduce that Nazis were in complete allegiance to Hitler and spent every day of their life, including the time during World War II, executing the policy. But all the soldiers in the army weren't the same. Some actively participated in the cruel acts and actually enjoyed them without feeling guilty. A few groups were depressed about how they treated humanity, but they had no other choice as they wanted to give their families a good and safe living. The third group showed courage and did things for humanity, and history will never forget them, even if we don't know them by their individual identity. That's it from today's episode of History Insights. I hope you would have found something new to learn from the video. If you liked it and want to know more about historical events, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It will motivate me to go the extra mile and bring more topics of your interest. Do you have a history topic in mind that you want me to make a video on? If so, please comment below. I'll make sure to get back to it really soon. For now, signing off. Bye-bye.